Level 4 XP, and welcome to your pre-scheduled episode brought to you by Anchor and Shrek Team Gaming. Today, we are going to be talking about the greatest and most notable gaming peripherals that have ever graced the video game market. What are they? What do they do? And why were they a part of the game? Well, Zach's going to tell you all about it today. Without further ado, let me introduce who I'm here with.
Irishguy, a.k.a. Mike.
This is Ronnie. And Zmainia, a.k.a. Zach.
Welcome, everybody. I'm Game Boy. As previously mentioned, Zach's going to take us on a field trip of the greatest peripherals ever to grace video game consoles. When you think of peripherals, we want you to think of stuff like the guitars or drums from the Rock Band series, or maybe even the gun for the Duck Hunt game. There have been many more than just those two that have been so notable. So we're going to go ahead and let Zach talk about what others there are and why we should remember them.
Thank you, David. So,
I'm sorry. Do you want the big screen for your feature, or do you want to just be regular screen?
it's just the image. They're not going to need to read anything.
Okay.
Yeah. So, when you say greatest, I was going to go over a lot of them. So, maybe not the greatest, but this is definitely the progression. What you currently see on the screen, in case you can't read it. What? Oh, why, thank you, my good sir. What you currently see on the screen is the Magnavox Odyssey 100, circa 1972. The first commercial digital video game console for home. This one was shipped with an analog controller that you can see there on the left with the big old thick boy cord. It was not so complex. It had one dial to control horizontal movement and one for vertical. Players could navigate Pong paddles for endless hours of joy. So if you've ever seen, what was it, That 70s Show, I believe this is the gaming console. If not, it was like the next gen or something like that. But it was basically, this is the one that Kelso ruined, that Mr. Red Foreman bought. Oh, I'm on the wrong window. Actually, we can full screen this.
Okay. Yeah, you know how to do it.
Yeah, I just gotta find.
Oh, do you want me to hit F11?
That would be preferable. Yes.
There you go.
All right. And then, as some would consider the grandfather of Mario's Duck Hunt, aka Nintendo, this would be the Shooting Gallery of 1972. Oh, I gotta scroll on this one too. My bad. So this remarkable rifle was actually the first light gun controller available for home consoles. The game had 4 compatible titles on the Magnavox Odyssey. Wildly inaccurate. The gun would score a hit even if the player shot at pretty much any light source, meaning you can point it at a light bulb to record a hit. But, I mean, there was no scoring, so you were only cheating yourself. Yeah. The technology definitely came a long way by NES days. Actually, it might have been this Atari, which I should probably scroll for. The Atari Home Pong console. Yeah, that actually looks more like it from the TV show. It's been a while since I've seen it.
I want to say they had the Atari, if I remember correctly, because of the coloring.
Yeah, I remember it was more of a black and white consistency, and it was a single device that he had both his hands on like this. Yeah, that sounds more appropriate. But this one was the take-home version of the game that started it all. The Atari Home Pong console contained the most powerful computer chips in a consumer product at the time when it was launched by Sears in 1975. The controllers were built into the console itself, as you can see, allowing players to slide their Pong paddle up and down by rotating a single dial. So this was pretty revolutionary for its time. You having two dials for 2 players instead of, as previously, it was a single controller. Also, not much development otherwise in terms of the controller itself. Really just largely started off as either point and click interface like a mouse. Yes?
I was just going to say, because occasionally I do want to make comments on
I was going to say that after I finish this one. Feel free to chime in whenever.
Two things that come to mind. So when you think of Pong and stuff, right? You look at the date that these 3 items were released. the 70s. What was going on in the 70s? Vietnam War was coming to an end, and then a lot of the stuff that was being portrayed, the 70s was not exactly a technological revolutionary age. So for this stuff to come out seems to be this. I think this is revolutionary for the time.
Quite so. In fact, let me just pull it up on my device right here. But if I remember correctly, this was also about the time, the 1970s, when virtual reality technology, just in general, really started to actually exist outside of just being theoretical or work in progress. Yeah, the 1970s is really when it started, though it was more specifically for medical flight simulations, automotive industry design, and military training purposes. I was going to bring up VR a little later because it's not until the 90s, really, that it's more applicable for gaming. But yeah, so 1970s was definitely a boom in technology for video games and otherwise.
The other thing I was going to mention is can you scroll down?
Of course.
The shooting gallery one. How not usable that would be in today's environment.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, the technology back then for screens, which actually continued up until really flat screens with the LED or LCD technology.
Oh, no. I mean like
The
2A nuts and stuff.
Oh, yeah. That too.
Whether you're for or against it. Just like,
Yeah.
you could not bring this. Think of how many homes you could not bring this into without enticing some kind of argument.
Yeah, definitely today.
So for those of you listening and not actually watching, this gun, it looks nothing like the Nintendo gun. That
It's
we all know
colored
and love.
accurately.
It looks like a regular old shotgun with a cord at the end of, kind of at the butt,
Yeah.
but not quite.
At the grip part.
When was the Oklahoma University shooting? Was it in the 70s?
The sniper?
Yeah.
I don't know.
I was just thinking to myself how
Honestly, you know how many shootings there's been to remember?
true.
Quite a few. But yeah, if you ever had a old BB gun from
Daisy.
Yeah, Daisy, yeah. Yeah, if you ever had one of those, that's pretty much exactly what it looks like. I have one from my childhood. It even has the sights on it, like the iron sights. Yeah.
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 But this is kind of what I've mentioned before, where a lot of this stuff that we see nowadays, where it's like, oh man, this new technology that's been out for a while, it's actually has it.
Mm.
It's been out for longer than that. I was one of the articles I was thinking about was like, honestly, this is the stuff when it was able to become commercialized.
Mm-hmm.
That a company can commercialize it and make an industry like that, because like fiber optics, wire was created in 1970, but there's a timeline of just the whole thought process of it going back to 1854 versus Bluetooth, which was oh gosh, where was it? That technology's been around for even longer than that.
I think it's roughly 40 years now.
Yeah,
I feel like that's the number that I most recently saw.
Sounds about right.
it was initiated in 1989, but just in the late 1990, early 2000s, it really became, the name Bluetooth was proposed in 1997, so the technology was before, but in 1997 was when the initial name came about. And as of 2009, Bluetooth finally got integrated into circuits. So it's kind of like where this stuff is like, for that time, yeah, it seemed like it was
Revolutionary.
Yeah, revolutionary for that time, but this technology has been around for at least 10 years.
Yeah, like with VR. VR was first brought about conceptually, I believe, in outside of science fiction.
Yeah,
brought up in 1950s, but it never even really saw any real work on it until maybe 1960s, late 1960s, and really wasn't a thing until effectively the 1970s.
Yeah. So it's just interesting, like going back and looking at all this stuff, and we're like, oh man, that's really bulky and everything, and it's just because we were able to actually get our stuff, the circuit down to where it is versus like what we have now.
Yeah. Everything consumers receive, even when it's new, is always going to be kind of out of date.
Yeah.
That just tends to be the case.
Yeah.
So you're both 80s babies, right? Born in the 80s?
Yeah.
Yep. 85.
So do you guys remember, not trying to be funny, but like to illustrate your point you just made, but do you guys remember these kinds of consoles? Do you ever play on them or anything? Or was your first iteration the Nintendo?
Mine was, so far, none of them. The one I remember was the first, like, the one I remember the most is NES, but I have played like Atari.
Okay.
Atari would be the first initial system. Not this one.
Not the Pong Atari. I'll point it out when we get to it.
The old, the one with the first one to have, I believe, 8 directional.
Omnidirectional movement.
Yeah, omnidirectional movement.
Yeah. I think the concept of having this one?
You're giving away your content. All right.
Not to them, though. I think the first, the D-pad was invented, I think, by, or the concept that we know it today, was for the Game & Watch by Nintendo. The watch gaming. That's not going to be on this episode. So it's not a spoiler. But yeah, so they made the Game & Watch, the watch that you can play games on, around the time that they were coming out with calculator watches. So they used that general technology and made the Game & Watch, which if you play Super Smash Bros. Or any of those variants, Game & Watch, that's where that character's from. In case you were like me, that was like, what is this Game & Watch? And he's just like, he's powerful, but I just don't understand where he comes from. Yeah. So anywho, the Fairchild Channel F 1976, kind of considered to be the second generation of consoles. They actually had, the built-in knobs and dials, actually having multiple controllers that are not connected by a really thick boy cord. It was better, but it had the 8-directional joystick, which is pretty cool. It was progress, but ultimately, it fell out pretty quickly compared to some other ones. Like this one looks pretty cool. The Coleco Telstar Arcade. Coleco. Yeah, that sounds a lot of fun.
Why does that look like
Revolver?
not the revolver, but I was just gonna say the Back to the Future. Is that it?
Yeah, like that symbol on top alone looks like it kind of reminds me of some of the warning stickers inside the DeLorean. I almost said Deluxo. I've been playing Grand Theft Auto online. This is the most extravagant example of a controller contained in the casing as compared to earlier with the Atari. The arcade version of the Telstar console offered 3 different functions: a steering wheel for driving simulators, 2 dials for the standard Pong Tetris variations, and a quick draw light gun. Unfortunately, there were no games that incorporated all 3 sets of controls.
You'd be
doing what Bob just did. You'd have to have it on like a Lazy Susan and be like drawn, and then either turn it and pull up a gun to shoot somebody.
So we'll have this. We'll have to get the link so we can put it in the description for those people who would like to kind of know what we're talking about.
Yeah, it's kind of in a pyramid. If you cut it in half, so you have the base of the pyramid. You have a steering wheel on one side, a gun on the other side that's like an old-fashioned, old-timey revolver.
It's a 6-shooter.
Yeah, 6-shooter. And then you've got the 2 knobs on the third and what looks to be the main side.
Yeah.
That'd be crazy. And then later on in the 1977s, because there was multiple, they came out with the RCA Studio 2.
Now, when I think of RCA, I think of the TV.
RCA actually, when in their prime, actually had a lot of stuff, unknown to the younger generation nowadays, where you look at TVs, VCRs, Google it.
That's gonna be our thing. Anytime we mention like VCR or VHS, it's just gonna be Google it.
Oh man, I haven't even busted out the 8-track yet.
Sir,
Google
does
it.
this come on vinyl?
All right.
Vinyl's made a comeback though.
I know, but it's still old.
Vinyl's actually, if you actually want to hear the best quality of a soundtrack, you want to get it on vinyl.
Yeah, look up the difference between analog versus digital signaling and sample rates, and it'll make more sense.
Yeah,
from a logistics side.
Even like I know with nowadays hipsters and stuff like that, hey, I said it. It has made a comeback just because if you do have that good sound, if you do want to hear like almost everything in that music, they're like the best to have.
Yeah. But yeah, this thing that looks like it belongs in your grandparents' house. So this one kind of took a step backwards in terms of futuristic design for the age. I mean, look, these two came out in the same year, the Telstar by Coleco and the RCA Studio 2. But for those of you that are watching, they look drastically different style-wise.
Yeah.
I mean, it looks like they went into your grandparents' station wagon, pulled out some of the upholstery or the dash, and like used that to make this.
And then they took the number pad off of your home phone.
Exactly.
Honestly,
off their home phone.
Honestly, all they did was take, because the old RCA remotes, that's what these used to be.
Yeah.
They just put two together.
I mean, it does say home TV programmer.
Yeah, that was gonna be my next.
That's honestly, because I think that was also during the times when the first introduction of having like multiple TVs at once together.
Yeah.
Of where, you needed that multiple thing to control different things at once.
Yeah, this one, the controller has two number pads, left and right, that gain different control functions for each of the 5 inbuilt games, some of which use the number layouts as directional pads. So this was kind of like an early stage directional pad, but not in the way that we use it nowadays.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was just gonna say it looks like it looks definitely like it's like you said, it just a really big phone.
Two remotes put together.
Yeah.
That's honestly what it looks like.
But yeah, then came out the Atari the same year, that the 2600 with the joystick, really mixing things up there.
History lesson for anybody who's been paying attention to the podcast. This is what the logo was inspired after.
I don't know what you're talking about.
My first attempt. So this is what I imagine what
This is pretty much where we get joysticks.
Yeah.
Not joysticks, but like I was just trying to name a few games that came out on the Atari, and I immediately drew a blank.
Well,
Yeah.
There was the, what was it, Halo 4600,
Oh, yeah. It came out on the Atari.
which we did an episode on Halo. Check it out. Shameless plug.
Actually, that
That was just recently.
2 weeks ago.
Yeah.
Just with the old joystick, because that was actually also, I'm wondering if they actually, because I'm trying to remember when the joystick actually came out for the computer, or if they merged this over with the computer, because I remember you could actually do.
You mean for flight simulators? I think that was later.
For some of the other, because I remember having a joystick for one of the computers I used to have when I could play like Quake and that type of stuff, some of those games on there.
Yeah, I think that was this. It most likely drew inspiration from this one, but I think that was definitely later.
But I also remember those being a lot bigger than this one was. So,
Yeah.
Hey man, size isn't everything.
well, this is the thing. Having computers throughout the ages, because I used to have an old computer that you actually had to run the DOS prompt first before you can do anything on.
Yeah.
Which meant that you actually had to put 3.5 or no, not the 3.5, the 5 floppy disk inside, run a program, which Nowadays, you don't even do it. You just hit the power button and it just starts up. No,
Yeah.
not in the old days. You actually had to run a boot command to do it.
That's when floppy disks were actually floppy.
Floppy, not these hard 3.5, which you can
Google it.
Google.
Look at the save icon on your computer.
That's where
that was
icon
what you
comes
used to
from,
save stuff on.
It
But
was an
even then,
actual
that was
thing.
a 3.5 floppy. The old
It's the good floppy.
the old floppy, where the term floppy disk came from, was an actual. It pretty much looked like three pieces of paper put together to run something.
Yeah.
And that, because the only reason why I remember that was because we actually used one of my schools actually had one of those, and that's how we played Oregon Trails.
Yep.
was
Yeah.
because of that.
You don't have to worry about dying of dysentery when you're waiting for that to load up. You'll
Right?
die of boredom first.
Yep. but
yeah,
moving on.
this was the first real, first
I don't know
real,
why, but-
implementation of the joystick.
Oh, never mind. I'm not gonna. I was thinking of something else, but never mind.
We'll skip through this in a second. Yeah, it just came with a pair of dial controllers for paddles or driving games, but it took an interesting turn in '82. Went a bit more nubby with it.
So I remember this one. I think this one was one of the ones that was in, or in a version like this was in Ready Player One. If I remember correctly, because I remember the kid holding it and moving a dial. It might have not been this big, but I want to swear that the at the end of it he had a Atari 52 instead of the 26.
It sounds right.
I look at this and I'm just like, this is where all the training for cell phones originated.
Yeah. Some of you younger viewers might be seeing the hashtag. We called it £sign for the longest time. Yeah, so it had the full gambit, 1 through 9 plus 0 star pound. Let's see what the description says.
Like basic. I'm just basically looking at it, and it's just like you would hold it like this. Am I not mistaken?
Yeah, you hold it with one hand in your hand, and then you would turn the dial like this.
Yeah.
It looks like it's also a joystick.
Yeah.
A joystick and possibly a dial.
Yeah, I believe it was a joystick, right?
It looks like it because the way it has the rings around it, like it has movement.
Yeah, I guess it is a joystick. It just doesn't move in the traditional sense that you would think nowadays when they say joystick. It's just mainly for the rotation. Yeah, that's pretty much it.
360-degree non-centering. I can't read the rest because
Oh,
non-centering joystick gave players control. 8-way to
So that instead of just like up
up, down,
Yeah.
left, right, it's
and then the directions, you can actually rotate like an actual thumbstick on a 360 controller or PlayStation.
or an Xbox Elite if you choose that particular thumb pad hookup.
Thumbstick.
I said thumb pad, but it's not a stick. It's a
Okay,
thumb up
anyway.
thing. Anywho, let's skip. That's just another. It's not really innovative.
Casio PV. Oh, okay. No, that's fine. We'll screw past it.
To
So now we're
the
na-
good money shot.
Yeah, yeah. Now we're into what everyone should be familiar with.
What a lot of people's, including my own, first gaming system, the Nintendo Entertainment System, 1983. The NES, very good game console. This is probably one of the ones that came out with the most individual games for it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, a lot of the ones that you've seen so far, they've either had pre-built into the hardware of the games, or they had a couple titles available, basically. But this one, I mean, almost goes without saying, but we're a podcast, so I'll say it. Had quite a selection. Things really started getting hot for gaming in the 1980s. While the USA underwent the video game crash in 1983, Japan saw the launch of one of the most iconic consoles of all time, as you see here, or at least the controller. The design for the controller was borrowed largely from their handheld Game & Watch, as I mentioned previously with the D-pad. 4 directions, 2 buttons, and a slice of brilliance.
Does everybody here refer to it as D-pad or cross?
D-pad.
I've always been a D-pad kind of guy.
D-pad.
Okay, good.
Yeah. So yeah, definitely one of the most iconic controllers of all time. I mean, there's still love for the Atari, but there's a few Ataris, and I don't know. I haven't seen too many or I can't remember what the knickknacks hanging from people's backpacks, but I've seen a lot of these.
Yeah.
I was just gonna say how like impressed I was what they were able to do with only B and A, as far as games were concerned.
Right.
So, quick discussion. So, for people to kind of visualize what the Atari 56 was, or 5600 was, in Ready Player One, at the end, spoilers, at the end, when you're in the attic with them, the little boy is actually playing the Atari 5600. So, him holding that and moving the dial, that was actually that controller. So it was kind of a mixture of both. So
Yeah.
but this system, it is really amazing. Only 2 keys.
Yeah, they don't have it here, but there was also the orange gun that everybody loves that came with the original Nintendo or Super Mario Bros. Game. It was also Duck Hunt. And with Duck Hunt, for those of you that somehow made it to this far without playing it or seeing it, it used a light gun like previously. I forgot what it was called. The
Shooter gallery.
The Shooter Gallery, yeah, by
Magnavox.
Magnavox, thank you. So they had a similar one, except it was significantly less realistic looking, and it actually worked, which was pretty nice. And
Most of the time.
yeah, most of the time, unless you have a pet rabbit that chews through the cords. No, just me. No,
I was gonna say there sounds like
a
there's
personal
some
story. There.
Yeah.
deep-seated trauma.
yeah, it always bit too. Bite. We caught it wild. It was probably not a good idea.
That explains
It
a
might
lot.
explain a lot.
Yeah. Somebody told my dad that he couldn't catch a rabbit with his bare hands, and he decided to prove them wrong. But that's
Zach's having some Vietnam flashbacks.
that's another story. But yeah, so there was also that controller for this system. Pretty nifty. It was pretty accurate, if I do say so myself, from personal usage. Yeah, it was a lot of fun.
Great way to stay in shape.
And a great way to stay in shape.
So what I'm noticing here is that they didn't show the gun,
Yeah.
which I'm a little disappointed in.
Myself as well. For those of you that are only listening, there's not really a significant difference. But those of you that are watching, yeah.
It looked like a laser gun,
It did.
orange and gray.
It was
And
a
it
lot of
was-
fun.
It is still one of the most iconic when it comes to video game guns.
Yeah.
The outline is used in a lot of places. So
In fact, I think they ended up remaking them in a format that works for current day televisions. Because as we were talking about before, since this is about the development of the peripheral devices of video games, the guns back then, they used the way screens did frames, which was they basically just populated, I think it was right to left and then down. So they do a line of lights of pixels, and they go to the next one and do a line. And once they finished, they went back up.
you were right. They're lights. They weren't pixels. They're lights.
Yeah.
One of my old bosses used to actually put those things together. And
Wow.
legit, it's a big tube with magnets in the back that just projects lights, like a light source.
Yeah.
It's
You can think of them as pixels for conceptualization's
Yes,
sake.
nowadays.
But yeah, lights. And so when you pulled the trigger, it would sense whatever it was specifically looking at on the screen. And basically how the light was, it would tell it whether or not there was a duck there, is the simple way to explain it. But that doesn't work with current day televisions where all pixels that are actually pixels are lit at the same time. So there was no flash feedback to tell it yay or nay. But yeah, so they ended up fixing that, I think, a couple years ago, maybe longer. It was a while ago.
it was
COVID
probably
time
when they
really messed time up.
when they redid the retro stuff.
Yeah.
where you can play everything on one system, and
They probably did it with like the NES Classic or something.
Yeah,
That sounds right.
Yeah, I think that's when they did it.
Yeah. Then moving on, we have...
I don't remember this.
You don't
I don't
remember the
either.
Sega Master System circa 1985?
Honestly, it looks like they saw what NES did, and they're like, we could do better.
Exactly. And but
That-
did they?
Well, I don't think so, because like first off, that like when you're holding the controller, you're holding it like so, right? And then honestly, with that thumbstick, unless you were at that time had the wherewithal to control it with your thumb tip as opposed to your hand.
That's nowadays though.
I
do
know,
like
but
the
I'm
idea.
saying-
Well, yeah, but this one, I mean,
Like-
that controller is probably the first thumbstick, if you will.
That's the predecessor
much,
to
yeah.
nowadays.
They,
Right.
they
Yeah.
said we have a D-pad and we have a joystick. Can
I think
merge them, but they
I
kept
think-
the skirt.
I think Sega wanted
Yeah.
to one up NES with the thumbstick,
I think, it
and
would
then the
work
cord
better.
on the right, that's in the way of.
Yeah, so they weren't really escaping from their. It has to be on a table approach to this largely, like a lot of the controllers have been, where actually you're like doing it from the T-Rex position, if you will.
Yeah, I mean, with that, we our outlook on how our front rooms look versus how they were back then, because a lot of times these are kids playing it on the ground though too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, they're not sitting in chairs. They either have a coffee table in front of them or they're playing on the ground.
Yeah, the old-fashioned.
The good old
Yeah.
days.
Yeah,
Laying on the
So-
carpet.
You got carpet?
in some of the rooms.
Yeah, in my front room I had carpet.
Yeah, so many rug burns, but those are also other stories.
Yeah.
Yeah. So this one, they were trying to tackle the NES's popularity, but it sounds like they failed short. I guess copying the controller design largely, except doing it way worse with that cord coming out of the side, just wasn't good enough. No.
Too ahead of the, but this is also one of those technologies that was be a little too ahead of its time.
Yeah, yeah. But largely, I'd say it's the controller's layout that really cemented it in not beating this one. This one's they won in their simplicity, I'd say.
Yeah.
They have everything you need pretty much for games back then, and the layout is reasonable. My only thing is for adults, I guess it'd probably be nicer to have the buttons slightly higher up, not really centered, but like just a little bit higher, because there's been times my hands gotten tired playing on those old controllers.
Yeah.
All right. And then as Sega evolves, they make a comeback 3 years later, and they actually add a third button. But they,
Oh man.
And change the controller drastically.
It's
Yeah.
just
Hey, trigger warning. There's trigger underneath B. You've been warned.
it just seems like just the conversation we had about the controller layout and everything. Sega was like, you know what's missing? You know what would really one up NES right now? A third button.
Yeah.
That's what we're missing.
They
But-
will never recover from this.
But this is also the thing is that as you look at 3 years since, right? Scroll down.
Yeah, it's 3.
Yeah. So you're looking at 3 years of now that we have this stuff, we can add an additional feature. And that's really what it is. You have another option to add to it instead of just like with Mario, you know, you either jumped or you ran.
Yeah.
You know, whatever A and B was. And then now this one, you're giving your characters an additional option, which,
Select.
yeah, you have more. It from
More
a marketing,
customization
You
from
could
what you
jump,
can do.
run, and crouch.
yeah, from a marketing point of view, this is actually brilliant.
Yeah. The ergonomics, however, from today's standards, not really. Though I will give them props.
You got to remember, they're coming from basically the NES controller.
Exactly.
to
This is
that.
this is basically
Huge.
if you don't count controllers that simulate real life items, like joysticks can be thought of as like the control sticks for flying planes and stuff like that. This is the first implementation of any recognizable ergonomics in any controller so far.
Yeah, I remember playing with this controller, and I actually preferred this controller over the original Nintendo controller.
Yeah, you don't have sharp corners that are digging into your hands as you're holding it. You actually can like grip it with your fingers. Much nicer. Yeah.
It was just bigger with kids' hands.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
I did notice that the article hints at Street Fighter, which, I mean, when you think of that game, 3 buttons make sense.
Yeah.
and that's what I mean is as the games evolve to add those newer features, what happens? You need
More buttons.
I mean, look at what we have now. You know, we have
16.
Well, no, I'm just saying 6 buttons on top of, not including the directional pads.
No, you got
if you have
you got the 4 on top. Depending on what console you're playing with.
let's use Xbox as the standard for
ABXY.
this.
Yeah.
ABXY, bumpers, triggers, so that's 8. Then you have right stick and left stick click, so 10.
Start, stop.
And pause, or I guess
Start
it's,
and stop
start and
don't really
select.
do stuff though.
Yeah,
I'm talking about features for in the game.
Well, yeah,
Pause.
I mean, pause. So, like, take Assassin's
pretty
Creed, for example,
standardized for
because,
that.
like, if you press start, you access the menu. You press back, you access the game's, like, map and other stuff like that.
Yeah, oftentimes with start, just because it's so universally used for menu or pause, I could give that to you just because of how again universal it is. But select, I would have to argue against because that is a lot of utility. Usually, that's like the in-game inventory. Hey, I'm playing an RPG and I want to customize my character, and I'm not playing Skyrim or Fallout, so I'm not pressing B.
I don't play a lot of console anymore, so
That's fair. But yeah, like so that definitely.
I'll give that to you now because
so 11.
off of going off of Nintendo, as we see right here, there's no select button on that.
Yeah, only the start button.
There was only the start button, and that's pretty much what the select button was. It was just okay. Now we're gonna do this.
A more in-game, actually applicable to the game menu button.
Yeah, it was just like, oh, you're ready to quit, or oh, you're switching to 2 players. Hit select.
Yeah.
So
Player 2, press select to join.
yeah,
so this
that
was
type
pretty
of thing.
revolutionary for its additional button and ergonomic construction. I definitely say it's like the next gen of controllers. But of course, can't forget the Commodore 64. Circa 19.
So I actually remember the controller. I don't remember the system.
Yeah,
So.
I think this more represents the first logo.
Yeah. I actually had one of these when I was a kid, but I had absolutely no idea what it was for. Because it was just it was just in my room one day. No explanation. It was just like, all right, I own this. And I don't even know how it got there to this day. Like somebody could have like broken into my house and I dropped my Commodore 64 that I travel with for some reason. I have no clue.
Right.
I wish I got to actually play it. I never knew what it was until after I lost it.
I thought it was something for the computer,
Me too, but I couldn't get it to
but
work.
it never worked.
I had the computer in my room, but I still couldn't get it to work.
Because
No internet.
I had the bigger version of this that was actually for a computer. Because the base, see, that's what I was saying. I think they came out with the ones for the computer first. Because the base of them, I remember the base was a lot bigger than what you get for the Atari and then what you get for this. So,
Yeah, this one didn't. It was not as successful as the PC version of it. Yeah, but it did come with a significantly brilliant controller, with rubberized suction cups to make sure that you don't like accidentally like go off with it, and to make sure that your control is useful without having to hold it.
someone gets angry and just like goes right, gets mad at the game and
Why the
throws
fuck you look at me when you said that?
Because you're the one that gets angry.
Yeah.
Yeah, but everything. You know what? I'm not gonna dignify that.
Hey,
I rest my case. Just that right there.
turn around. Turn around.
Yeah,
Feel attacked.
it's a shame that it wasn't really well received, but it was. I believe this was a first for a full-on joystick.
I don't.
Yeah,
I was just gonna say I don't know if I agree with that because like, if you think about Thrustmasters,
what masters?
you can Google it. But they're the ones that make all of the are the
don't
ones
wanna
that
tell.
make all of the air flight peripherals that professional gamers use for flight simulator and everything.
Nowadays,
Yes. You guys are gonna make me look it up.
I just want to know where they're mastering the art of the thrust.
I just don't want someone to Google something and something else pops up on the
Yeah,
browser.
so don't Google that until we verify that it's
Even
result will
then-
be safe for work.
I would just say even then, just don't Google that.
Yeah.
We don't want to control because I know that just saying Thrustmasters into a Google search, you'll get pinged
Yeah.
for most. Most
A lot of adult content.
So you guys remember earlier when Sega when Sega told Nintendo
Did that
suck it, we
hurt?
got a third
A
button?
little.
yes,
Well,
Okay.
they responded in kind by not only adding an extra button, but they actually brought in the select button. Okay, it is real.
well, no, they already had the select button.
But like no, the start and the select. Did they?
The
Yeah, they
original
did.
Oh, yeah,
NES,
yeah,
NES had it.
They
were
added
just-
two.
We were
additional
talking about
buttons.
it on Sega, and I just wasn't thinking.
So
I sit corrected.
So this is definitely one of the controllers. So, does anybody remember the phrase 4-button reset?
I do recall that.
No,
It's when you press. This is
I'm not that
actually
old.
when select actually took off as a use. But start select RNL, and you reset your game.
Yeah, I think at one point Xbox had a similar setup. Don't quote me on when, but it was on the I think it was the 360 to reset the home page. You had to do I think a 4-button hold for like a few seconds, maybe
Yeah.
10, and that was in case it froze or whatever.
I will point out that this controller was for the rich kids, because the original SNES controller, Y and X were this purple shade, and B and A were gray.
Yeah. This is definitely the fancier, more palated version of it.
yeah,
So yeah, this one.
I had both.
Ooh, fancy you.
Depending on the edition that you got, was depending on which controller.
I'm not familiar with Famicom. Is that like for example, Turtle Beach would be a creator of controllers? Would that
Razor.
Razor?
Yeah.
Would that is Famicom just a brand?
I believe so.
I think so. Yeah.
Okay.
They even have their own brand logo next
Yeah,
to it.
I think it was a third party that was authorized to sell their.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. So for those listening, the controller we have on screen says Nintendo Super Famicom with logo on there.
Yeah, and the button colors are equivalent to that what you'd see on a Xbox controller.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because even the
pretty nice.
Switch controllers nowadays have the purple and gray buttons, or the two offset.
Yeah.
I haven't.
So even the
played Switch in a
the
while.
Switch controllers have the.
What are you talking about, David?
Jesus Christ.
I have a Switch. I just haven't played it in a while.
Yeah. I leave mine at my girlfriend's house. She plays it.
It's an excuse to go over there.
All right.
The only excuse.
I refuse to comment on that comment.
What is this?
The Sega
You don't know what this is? Oh my gosh!
I couldn't skip this one.
Oh my god. Okay, go continue.
Oh, no.
No, go.
So long before the interactive days of the Wii or the Kinect, the Sega, they launched their own get off the couch controller. The vastly unsuccessful Activator, as seen here, if you're watching, was designed for use while playing fighting games. So you place it on the floor in front of and a safe distance from your TV, and you control your character by punching and kicking the infrared beams. So it was pretty expensive, and probably a large reason why it flopped. Yeah.
Yeah. It. So I remember seeing the commercial on this because this was, which one I don't know if it's going to mention, is the Power Gauntlet. So this and that were kind of like very, very revolutionary.
Yes. Like, so in the beginning of the somewhere in 1990s is when VR technology first like really started becoming a thing for video games. And so like the interactivity with your video games outside of merely using a controller, this is when it really became a thing. Like, I mean, technically with the guns, like it used a sensor, but I would argue that it's not quite on this level.
Yeah. I do remember the commercial being young and them having this, and this was one of the things that I thought was like awesome.
Yeah, like the concept alone is amazing, but like the price, which I don't have in front of me, unfortunately, prohibitively expensive. Because I think people sometimes forget how expensive the video games were back then. Because they'll think, oh, $150 for this gaming console, that's not that bad. But in today's dollars, that's pretty much a brand new Xbox.
Yeah,
and that was just for like less than what we get now sometimes.
Yeah.
I take it people who were born in the 80s, when they hear "let's step into the octagon," this is what you thought of?
No, the octagon was an actual octagon.
No, I'm aware.
That was MMA fighting. No. This is where do you think they got this from?
He said your joke falls flat, young man.
I got it.
I know.
So we're going to go ahead and take, for those of you who are listening on Spotify, we're going to go ahead and take our first anchor break, the service that we currently use to distribute the podcast to you. For those of you watching on YouTube, you're just going to be graced with music for the time being. We'll be right back after this brief message and after we have a chance to stretch our legs.